Morning everyone. So this week's theme is on the topic of fear. Now you might think, why have we picked fear? Isn't that a bit negative? And yeah, you'd be right. But you can't just always look at, say, the positive things like courage and determination. We've got to look sometimes at the cause in able to fix it. So this week we are going to look at fear, but thinking about how we can challenge that fear and how we can cope with it better. When we hear the word fear, we often think of being scared. So there's loads of things that people are scared of. Spiders, heights, flying. But they're quite big things and things that we don't have to deal with every day. So if you're scared of flying, you might only have to cope with that maybe twice a year, or maybe not even at all. But every single day, we all face different types of fears. We all have worries and we all have anxieties, and that's normal. But we need to learn to cope with them. And we need to learn how we can offload them so that they don't affect our daily lives every single day. If I think of myself, I have a really irrational fear of phone calls to people I don't know. I don't know why, some of you might be the same. But I hate talking on the phone to people that I don't know. And actually, that can affect my daily life. And so therefore, I have to learn ways to cope with it. And you might be the same. You might have something that causes you problems most days because you get anxious or worried about it. And maybe at the minute, some of you are getting quite worried and anxious about home learning. And again, that's okay. Being fearful is a normal human response. It's built into our DNA. So therefore, don't ever feel ashamed if you're scared or anxious or worried about something, because everyone gets like it. You're not alone. But like I said, it's about us learning to cope with that better. And I wonder if maybe Josh has got a few ideas of how we can settle our hearts, settle our anxieties and our worries, so that we can cope better in our daily lives.
Yes, Sam, as it happens, I do have a few ideas.
What a coincidence, eh? It's almost like we're planning.
While I get my breath back, I wonder what your biggest fear is.
My biggest fear is heights.
My biggest fear is helicopters.
My biggest fear is failure, as that's what I believe people will think about me if I don't achieve what I should.
My biggest fear is nosebleeds because I really don't like blood. That's why I'll never be a surgeon.
And you know, I'm going to let you into a little secret. Come closer. No, closer. Closer. Adults get scared as well.
My biggest fear is not being able to see my children grow up.
My biggest fear is COVID at the moment and the consequences that it brings.
My biggest fear is not making the most of the opportunities that come my way in life.
My biggest fear is going bald after having suffered alopecia over the years.
If I had to pick my biggest fear, it would be flying, particularly on long flights.
My biggest fear is definitely going underwater.
When I was at high school, we had a swimming pool. Sounds good, I know, but we had to do swimming for PE. It made us dive in. Every week. Anyway.
Now, I always find it strange how when you become an adult, no one talks about fear anymore. Everyone calls it anxiety. They call it worry. But you know, adults still fear. We still get scared. We get scared of so many different things. But I can think of two great top tips about handling fear. Because when we fear something, it's almost like we build our own wall that stops us from getting to freedom on the other side. Now, how can we best deal with this wall? How can we best tear it down in our minds? Or at least work our way round to living with it better? So here are two things that I find helpful, two ways to deal with fear. And the first is this: having the right perspective. Now, down here, I've got a big old rope. Huge thing, it stinks. But we'll look over that. Now, imagine this rope isn't just a rope. Imagine it's a timeline of your life. We have years and years and years that stretch out before us. But imagine this white part here. Imagine this white part represents today, or this week, or even this year. Now, when we fear something, that's all we can see. Our view, our vision gets clouded by the thing we fear, and we can't look past to the hope that's in the future. We can't look past to any future. And so when we fear, it's like we just stare at this one part in front of us, and we worry about what will happen here in this part of the timeline, and if this happens here, then maybe that'll affect there, and what will happen. But then we forget about the next year. We forget about all these years to come. We forget about all the life ahead of us. We even forget about eternity. What happens to us after we die? If you look at life beyond here and now, beyond the part that you fear, then you'll find there's so much hope. There's a future ahead of you that doesn't have to be clouded by fear. So having the right perspective on things, viewing things in the right way, helps so much when we fear things. We've shifted from looking at it from this angle, with fear of the unknown. We now look at it from this angle, and the fear goes away. Having the right perspective is key in handling our fear. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is having someone to lean on. I don't know if you've heard of that story by Julia Donaldson called The Gruffalo.
I really wanted to put a picture of a PE teacher there, but I didn't want to get in trouble.
But if you don't know the story of the Gruffalo, it starts with a little mouse walking through a forest, and he meets different animals who are his enemies. He meets a snake, he meets a fox, he meets an owl, and all of those animals he's fearful of, he's scared of them, because alone he's not strong enough. But eventually he meets and befriends the Gruffalo, and by the end of the story he walks back through the forest and he meets these animals again. He meets the fox, he meets the snake, he meets the owl, but this time his fear's gone. He meets them and he's not fearful anymore. Why? Because at his back, walking behind him all the way, is the big scary Gruffalo. The mouse knows that he's got nothing to fear, because if the Gruffalo's with him, then who can stand against him? And you know, that reminds me of a Bible verse. Romans chapter 8 verse 31 says this: if God is for us, who can be against us? You see, when I go through life as a Christian, I know that no matter what happens to me, no matter what is in my future, no matter how scary or fearful or unknown it is, I know that I've always got God at my back. And with him for me, what can possibly stand against me? The creator of heaven and earth, the one who's made every person, the one who knows our thoughts, the one who sees all of our actions. He's the one who's made himself my defender, my protector. Whenever God forgives someone through them trusting in Jesus, that he died in their place for their sin, then he makes himself their defender. He's no longer a judge, but he's a loving God. He's a father, and he protects and he goes with a Christian for all their life. So no matter what fear I face, I have someone to lean on. I have God at my back, walking with me, and with him behind me, whom shall I fear? So there are my two top tips. Having the right perspective, viewing things rightly, not allowing our fear to cloud our vision and get in the way of our future. And second, having someone to lean on. For you it might be family or friends. For me, the greatest of all is God. There's an old hymn that says this: turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full at his wonderful face, and the fears of the earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace.